half in the bag.
Movie theaters are like the inside of a dumpster.
Thanos Part 2 chronicles the further adventures of Thanos, a purple nutsack man that tried to do the universe a favor by wiping out half of the population. Some ingrates in silly costumes tried to stop him for some reason. What a bunch of assholes.
What a bunch of a-holes.
Bring on the mass genocide, Daddy Thanos. All we're doing with our time here anyway is posting pictures of tacos and shit on Instagram. Mike, what did you think of Avengers Endgames?
Avengers Endgame. Was it good? Yes. Was it great? Eh. Was it as good as Infinity War? Nope. Was it a satisfying conclusion to the 10 years of Marvel movies? Sure.
It's not as good as Infinity War. Infinity War has a much cleaner narrative, and this movie's kind of a bunch of different movies, which helps the 3-hour runtime. Every act is like a new movie, which helps. But as far as like a cohesive narrative, not so much.
No.
And before getting into spoilers, I liked a lot of it, but I have one big gripe, and it's kind of a major one, which is...
I have a list of gripes.
Okay, well, my major one is the resolution of dealing with Thanos. I did not find it satisfying, and it was very underwhelming. Without getting into spoilers, I can't say much.
Now on to spoilers. Spoilers, because everyone was pissed about Endgame spoilers. That was a trending thing on Twitter. Don't spoil Endgame, hashtag.
I will say going into this, I wasn't spoiled. I didn't see any spoilers.
I know, me neither.
And it was refreshing to...
It was nice. Thank you, Internet.
Yeah, people did a pretty good job. But also, like, after Infinity War, which ends so dark and open, where, like, I was like, I have no idea where the next movie's gonna go. And that was kind of refreshing for one of these comic book movies, where it's like most of the standard, just like the standalone movies, you're like, they're all basically a variation on the same story.
Right.
So it's nice with this one, where it's like, I legitimately have no idea where it's gonna go. Maybe time travel, because I got the stone, the time stone. Although the time travel in this movie doesn't even relate to the time stone.
It doesn't.
Which was interesting and kind of fun.
It's hard to talk much about this movie without getting into spoilers.
Yeah. So
I have a list, not gripes, let me correct that. I have a list of questions.
Okay.
Which may or may not have answers.
Are they time travel related?
No.
Okay.
I left those out because they dealt with that in the movie. Spoilers, there's time travel in the movie. I think lots of us knew that. Mark Ruffalo poo-poos any ideas of like the grandfather paradox and things of that nature, like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, when we got to hide a key in the bush so that later our future selves can find it.
Trash can. Remember a trash can.
Trash can, what are you talking about?
You can't affect, it's typical confusing time travel nonsense.
They reference other time travel movies, Back to the Future and movies like that, and then they basically say, ignore all those rules.
Yeah.
We're making up our own, and
they're just as nonsensical, but whatever.
And that's okay.
That's fine.
They're just like, don't think about that.
Yeah.
It's that scene in Austin Powers.
How could I have been unthawed in the 90s and traveled back to, oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
I suggest you don't worry about this sort of thing and just enjoy yourself. That goes for you all, too.
It was messy, but kind of in a good way, where there was all these pieces like smeared all over the place, and I don't know. It wasn't like you said, a cohesive narrative. Infinity War, cohesive narrative.
Yeah.
Endgame, still a good movie, but all over the place.
Yeah.
And that led to lots of different, unexpected things.
Yeah.
So yeah, you weren't sitting there going, okay.
Now here's the part where they have to confront Thanos, and here's the part. Well, they subvert your expectations right away when they fucking cut off Thanos' head in the first 10 minutes.
Right.
Which I almost wish that was it for Thanos in this movie.
I thought it might be.
I thought, and then the rest of the movie is them trying to figure out how to reset the timeline.
Yeah. And some
complications ensue.
Yeah. Or a different villain emerges to take Thanos' place to kind of like, he wants to stop them for his own gain or something.
Yeah, I would have been fine with no main villain.
Well, sure.
I would have been completely okay with that. And that's my biggest problem with the movie is Thanos, because we get Thanos from the past ends up being the main villain for this, which means he's essentially a different character. He doesn't have the experience, or he's not the one, this version of Thanos is not the one that's responsible for the snap in the last movie. So it's almost like they're dealing with a different villain, and that kind of takes away from a lot of the weight of what Thanos did at the end of the previous movie. So that's my biggest gripe with the movie, is that the dramatic stakes are lessened by the fact that this is not, it is Thanos, but it's not really Thanos.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I was kind of like, oh, okay, now Thanos is hip to what's going on, and now he's kind of coming in as the bad guy. The first, I don't know how you structure this film. I guess that would be an act.
It's kind of 3-act structure, sort of.
The first chunk, when they do their thing, where they kind of like, okay, what are we going to do? We can jump through time now, right? There are 3 Infinity Stones in New York, roughly at this time period. There's 2 over here, and there's 1 over here, making 6. Let's go get them. And we're
let's Back to the Future to it.
Let's Back to the Future to it. We're going to split up into teams, and I was like, hey, this is kind of like an Adventures heist movie. I would have liked that idea stretched much further, because we discover their plan as it's happening. Because they all go, okay, everybody knows their missions, let's go. And they're, oh, we're going, okay, the mission was this. Oh, wait, what was the mission? It's happening now. Oh, the mission was this. Like, in example, the first Ocean's 11 movie, they practice, I think I've referenced this recently, because that's a great movie, and it's really solid heist movie.
Yeah.
The safe in the Bellagio has lasers on the floor. We have to get a Chinese acrobat in through this little tiny hatch. We have to sneak him in through a money cart.
Yeah. The whole movie is them planning it, basically, right?
Yes, and it's like, here's our plan in detail. And if one thing goes wrong, everything falls apart.
Yeah.
And I didn't know their plan.
I mean, you understand what their goal is, but like the way to accomplish it is kind of brushed over.
Yes, and so when there's complications in the plan, and I don't know what the plan is, it deflates a little of the excitement of what's happening, because I was like, I know they have to get that Tesseract, but I don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun, but then here comes Thanos.
Well, that's the second act of the movie you're talking about. The first act is wallowing in misery, which I enjoyed.
Of course you did.
Well, no, I think it makes the ending more satisfying, because it's like the ending of Infinity War, you're kind of left, everybody's just like completely in shock, and then the movie cuts to credits. And so this movie, like, it really lets you kind of see how everybody's been dealing with this, where the world is. It's almost post-apocalyptic when they have Ant-Man walking around the streets and like no one's been picking up the garbage and like all that stuff, where it's like, this is where we're at. And it gives a little more weight to once they start trying to correct everything. So it's like, it has that where it's like, okay, we're gonna take our time. But the problem with that is then when you get to the time travel stuff, they rush through the setup for that. Speaking
of time travel, I'd be remiss in my duties if I didn't bring up Star Trek. So the Star Trek Voyager series finale opens on the USS Voyager landing on Earth. And as we all know, the entire series has been the ship trapped in the Delta Quadrant trying to get back home, which would take about 60 or 70 years. 60,000 space miles. But at the end, it's in the future. It took them 23 years to get home. And then we flash forward 10 years after that. They get home, but at a great cost. Along the way, sometimes 7 of 9 dies. Chakotay dies of a broken heart. Captain Janeway stands over his grave and says, I'll avenge you.
But when I'm through, things might be better for all of us.
Tuvok had a mental condition which he was unable to treat all those years in the Delta Quadrant because he didn't have the proper medicine, which was back on Earth. So he gets the Vulcan equivalent of Alzheimer's.
Oh my God.
And he's insane. And so Captain Janeway is very dissatisfied with how things have turned out.
Are you familiar with a drug called cronexylene?
We've been testing it at Starfleet Medical to determine if it can protect biomatter from tachyon radiation.
She seeks out the doctor to give her an experimental medication which will allow her to time travel. She discovers a brilliant Klingon scientist who has built a time travel machine in the past, the Voyager crew discovered a cluster of wormholes.
There appear to be hundreds of distinct sources.
That was in the hub of a bunch of Borg ships. It was like a nest, a Borg hub, and there are millions of wormholes that the Borg used to shoot all over the galaxy. And so in the future, after all these people had died and Janeway had this kind of like, oh, this future sucks, I want to go back in time and fix it, she steals the Klingons' time travel device.
This will do just fine.
Uses the PIM molecule to protect her from time travel, and then travels back in time and tells her younger self, look, I'm gonna armor up the ship with future technology that will make you impervious to the Borg. Then you could take this ship and fly through that wormhole and get everybody home 23 years earlier, and all these people don't have to die. And then younger Captain Janeway's like, no.
Well, I'm still me, and this is still my ship. So no more talk about what's going to happen until I decide otherwise.
I'm younger, more moral Captain Janeway, and older, more bitter, more cynical Captain Janeway kind of expected her to do that. So she double crosses her and sacrifices herself to the evil Borg Queen and says, look, we can have our cake and eat it too. You guys fly through the wormhole and I'll blow up the fucking Borg hub so that the evil Borg Queen can't get it, just like Thanos can't get that Infinity Gauntlet. Their plan works. Captain Janeway and everybody return. Shoot. They fly into Earth in a giant exploding Borg cube to a fleet of starships that come to meet them to fight the Borg, just like all the superheroes came and fought the Thanos and all of his bad guys. And the name of this final episode of Star Trek Voyager?
Endgame?
Endgame.
Is it actually? That's pretty fucking amazing.
Jay, am I suggesting this was plagiarized by the Duffer Brothers?
The Duffer Brothers.
I mean the writers of Star Trek Discovery. I mean the Russo brothers.
Wait, did you mention Star Trek Discovery? But does that final episode of Star Trek Voyager have a tacked-on, completely pointless cameo from a character that they just shoved in there for no reason? Captain Marvel's appearance in this was almost comical. She shows up at the beginning. She says like one word. She's like, hi, I'm here. And then she's like, I gotta go, bye.
She had to go and try to remove all those press junket videos of her off YouTube.
Right, guys?
Yeah.
Isn't it fun being there for all my extra takes?
Signed you up for the apprenticeship.
Oh my God, I look like such a
I was kind of open with this, like Doctor Strange, you know, in his own movie, he's like, whatever, but I really liked him in Infinity War.
Yeah.
So I was kind of hoping they'd pull through with Captain Marvel in this, or it's like, okay, I like her now, but she has nothing to do. I think the Russos didn't know what to do with her.
Unless Captain Marvel was super integral with the Thanos storyline in the comics, to where it would have been like riots in the streets.
If they didn't include her.
If they didn't include her, but, and then in this, she shows up at the beginning. She helps Tony Stark fly the Guardians of the Galaxy ship back to Earth. And then she's like, I gotta go.
And then we have a Poochie went back to his home planet moment.
Yes.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
And I want to talk about that. That's one of my questions. And then she comes back at the end, and as Laser Lady, shoots through Thanos' big ship and blows it up and crashes it.
Yeah.
And then literally a minute later, Tony Stark puts on the Infinity Gauntlet and smokes everyone. Mm-hmm. Captain Marvel could have just zipped around and smoked everyone. So it deflates Tony Stark's sacrifice almost entirely by her even being involved in the story whatsoever. And that's a nice segue into my first question.
Okay.
And these aren't gripes, these are questions. They may have answers. So if you know the answer, keep it to yourself. So I really don't care. Captain Marvel brings Tony Stark's ship, lands, and says, hey, I'm Captain Marvel. And no one even really cares.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. They're not like, ooh, wow, you're neat. What do you do?
They had to put her in.
Yeah. And
she's just sort of standing there.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre.
I like this one.
There's a mild earthquake somewhere. And someone says, there's earthquakes happening. And then I think it's the lady from Black Panther, the bald lady, and she's like, it's happening all over the world. It's also happening on other planets ever since Thanos did his thing. And then Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, says, I gotta go look into this. Well, why don't you stay here, says Thor or somebody. And she's like, there's 1,000 other worlds out there, and I gotta go check into this shit. And then she leaves.
Yeah.
Never brought up again, this earthquake problem.
Maybe that's another movie, I don't know.
It was like, we need a reason for Captain Marvel to fly away and leave the movie until the very end. What could be more important than saving 50% of all life known to exist in the universe?
Yeah.
Some earthquake trembles on some other planets? I get the universe is a big place and there are other problems that Captain Marvel has to go investigate, but I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? And mind you, these aren't Promethean level questions.
Oh, no.
These are just a couple of little questions.
I was hoping if they would expand on her a bit in this movie and make her a little more interesting, but instead they were just like, get her out of the movie.
Her only definition is sassy, and like Stark is sassy, but there's so much more going on with Stark.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I did like about the movie was that all those personal resolutions with a lot of the characters.
Yeah.
Thor with his mother, Stark with his dad.
That's all the stuff that really worked with the movie. I've never cared this much about Captain America.
Right.
He was great in this.
He was underutilized in Infinity War.
Well, Infinity War was the Thanos movie. That was his story, and so now like that's been told, and so now it's really focused more on the original kind of core Avengers characters and wrapping up a lot of their stuff, and all that was handled really well. All the emotional kind of closures were good.
Yeah. That stuff is the heart of the film. You can overlook the technical details, but some technical details I was just kind of confused on. Another question. Thanos is a big, pretty tough guy. When we first see Thanos in Infinity War, they bring out the Hulk. But Thanos is able to beat up the Hulk. And then when they're fighting Thanos on Titan at the end, he has 4 out of 6 Infinity Stones, and he's fighting everybody, and they still manage to stop him. And then Tony Stark even holds his own against Thanos pretty well, enough to draw blood.
All that for a drop of blood.
But ultimately is defeated by Thanos. And that's Thanos holding 4 Infinity Stones. On Earth, Thanos has 0 Infinity Stones and is able to take on Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man at the same time.
Yeah.
And even Captain Marvel for a little bit until he grabs the Power Stone and punches her. I thought Thanos was just a big, strong, purple guy. With the stones, he's virtually indestructible.
Right.
Without them, he's just a big, strong, purple guy. And a big, strong, purple guy versus Thor alone would lose. And versus all 3 would just die.
Well, that's why, like I said, I think this would have worked better if Thanos was just out of the movie.
I know.
How strong is Thanos supposed to be?
You could not live with your own failure.
So this film, Endgame, opens with Hawkeye teaching his daughter how to shoot arrows. They're having a happy family picnic outside. And then, without being too graphic and showing it, his family turns to dust.
It's very tastefully done. Yeah.
Tastefully done. It's daytime. And Thanos, when he snapped his fingers, he was in Wakanda, in Africa, and it was also daytime. Why wasn't it nighttime in the US?
Because they wouldn't be having a happy family picnic at night.
So once the Avengers collect all the Infinity Stones, they use an Iron Man hand to attach them all to, which works. So why did Thanos go through all that trouble to have Peter Dinklage, the dwarf smelter, harness the power of the sun?
Yeah, they make a big deal out of that in Infinity War.
In order to forge a very special, unique gauntlet, almost as powerful as Thor's hammer, to wield the Infinity Stones, when Iron Man's hand could do it, which is just a simple Earth mechanism. Again, I don't have the answers. Someone out there might, other than convenience. Again, not complaining. I guess that one's a little bit of a complaint because I know why. It's like,
what do we do?
We can't go back to Urbagarben, whatever.
Peter Dinklage's place.
Peter Dinklage's place, and have reforge another gauntlet and come back to
do that scene again.
Yeah.
That's a gripe I have. Is they redo the scene from Infinity War with Thanos and Gamora when he sacrifices her. They do that exact same scene basically with Hawkeye and Black Widow. But it's just so visually similar. It's not like it's fun to see them go back into the previous movies and go like into the original Avengers movie. Like that stuff's fun, but like we just saw this in Infinity War. So to have the same sort of setup, the same looking scene.
And this is not a complaint fest.
No, I mean, well, the thing is, the movie's got so many solid things in it that this stuff sticks out more. Infinity War is like, that movie is like a miracle that works so well.
Infinity War's tight.
Yeah, this movie it's super entertaining. There's lots of great moments, but...
And we'll talk about those.
We'll talk about those too.
But first, we're going to finish our gripes.
Complaints and grievances.
Who hasn't been to space? You better not throw up on my ship.
Captain America's arc, lovely. He says, "I'm done being Captain America. I'm just going to live as Steve Rogers."
Yeah, I've been alone and out of time and out of place for all these years. Now I'm going to go back and live the life I should have with my lady.
So I'm assuming Steve Rogers and his lady lived out their normal life while all the Avengers action was happening.
Yes, which probably creates some problems where it's like. He had to just like, if it's Captain America that travels back in time and then lives his life out with Peggy Carter, all the events from all the previous movies are still happening because he can't affect that. He can't change that. So it's like, I guess he just has to like sit back and watch while like S.H.I.E.L.D. gets taken over by Hydra and all these horrible things happen.
At least he'll know the dangerous spots to avoid.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, because you want to go into New York City today, Steve? No, how about we stay home and Netflix and chill? So, okay, that's my question there. And then Anthony Mackie, a.k.a. the Falcon, goes and talks to him, and then Captain America basically dons him as the new Captain America. Here's my shield. Mm-hmm. But Anthony Mackie is not biologically altered super soldier.
No.
I think he's just a guy with a Falcon suit.
Yes. But now he's a guy with a Falcon suit and a shield.
Would he politely decline the shield? And say, I've got the Falcon suit, which would protect my head and chest?
Well, I'm wondering if that is just a little, because there's a couple things in this where it's like little nods of where I think the future of this franchise is going to go.
Yeah.
He's going to be the new Captain America. Valkyrie is going to be the new Thor, basically.
The female Thor, yeah.
Yeah, but none of these characters are terribly interesting. Like, it doesn't make me excited for the future of Marvel movies.
And potentially Thor will be part of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's the only thing where I'm like, hey, I'm okay with that. He's fun with them. He was fun with them in Infinity War.
Chris Hemsworth is just an incredibly talented comedian.
I think at some point along the line they figured that out because they cast him as Thor probably because he's big and hunky, and then somewhere along the lines of making these movies they're like, oh shit, he's actually funny. Let's give him more and more comedic stuff to do, which reaches its apex with this movie as Fat Thor.
Fat Thor.
Which I think there was a thing when Infinity War came out. There was like people on Twitter or whatever like thirsting for Thanos. They're like, Thanos is hot. That became a thing. So I have a feeling in the wake of this movie, Fat Thor will be a thing.
That's it on my questions. And I thought the Tony Stark conclusion was great. The ending of the three of them, the core Avengers, you could say, Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man, fighting Thanos, great. Yeah. And Tony Stark's sacrifice and death.
I was thinking about that during the big CGI battle with hundreds of thousands of characters in this. And I was thinking back to the first Iron Man movie. Now the conclusion of that is like Jeff Bridges awkwardly CG'd into a robot suit, and that's like it just feels so quaint.
Oh sure, all good things, as
Yes,
they say.
yes.
Which was the title of the final episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Look at that.
Yeah.
In the last episode of Star Trek Enterprise, you know what that was called? Thanos. It was called Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh my God. How was nobody pointed this out before?
And that was about a purple space monster trying to collect all 6 Infinity Gems from around the universe.
I know I said no more surprises, but I was really hoping to pull off one last one.
I feel a great sense of relief.
As a conclusion to what this has kind of become, this sort of a little over 10 years of making these movies, it's a wonderful conclusion. The great shot at the end during Tony Stark's funeral, where characters are awkwardly CG'd into one continuous shot.
Wait a minute, did you look that up?
I didn't, but I have a feeling that they did not get everybody together for that one shot.
See, that's my cynical brain is like, as well, as I'm watching that shot and I'm like, wow,
this is impressive.
Here. This is impressive. They did this old school style. They really got one long take. You know, it's that shot at the end of Titanic when Rose dies and she goes through the doorways and all the characters are there and they move up the stairs and there's Jack Dawson by the clock.
I'm just picturing them filming like Jon Favreau on a green screen.
Yeah. They had a motion controlled camera to slightly simulate like that steady cam and look, and it's kind of going through and it's just on this like robot rig. It took him 48 days to shoot it. Sam Jackson's coming in, but he can only be here for 6 minutes. And then Michael Douglas was there, right?
It's crazy how many people, like not just celebrities, but like legitimate movie stars show up in this movie for 5 seconds. Robert Redford shows up, which is funny because he was in a movie last year called The Old Man and the Gun, and that was like a big deal of being like his final performance, like he's retiring from acting. It's like, oh no, and then they just gave him a big check to show up for this too. But as I guess you could call it fan service, all the little cameos, Tilda Swinton, but it's all kind of in service of what's happening, and it's actually fun. Yeah. It's not just, remember this, it's like it's affecting the story and all the Back to the Future 2 stuff of interacting with the previous movies. It's goofy and fun.
Yeah, well, it's not only part of the story, but it's all part of the lineage or legacy of all the films that came before it. So that's a nice way to it's like the final episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
And if any franchise has earned that, it's these fucking Marvel movies. I mean, it's a testament to how well they've done this whole cinematic universe thing. Every other franchise or studio that's tried it has like failed horribly.
Yeah, lesser entries than others, you know, but overall, all quality films in the category of superhero films.
Right, except for those Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Those stand out.
They're a little different.
They're not just good for superhero movies. Like, I legitimately like those movies a lot.
Just fun comedy, sci-fi adventures.
Yeah, and these last 2 Avengers movies I would put in that category too.
Good things, the Marvel movies over the years. I mean, we're not only talking about Endgame, but we're also talking about closing down this entire cinematic universe. Wrapping up, I should say, to restart it with Phase 7.
I would, if they start this next phase and it's not nearly as successful as all these previous ones, then they'll be like, we're bringing back Iron Man. It's Tony Stark's daughter now.
I think one of the issues for me, though, would be reestablishing new threats that haven't been done before. And you can't get bigger than Thanos.
That's what was the most like surprising and satisfying about these last 2 Avengers movies, is how interesting Thanos turned out to be. That was the real shock, because they kept like hinting at him in the previous movies, and he was never. It's like, oh, he's just a big purple space guy, whatever. But then giving him the depth that they did in Infinity War, it's like, wow, that was legitimately surprising.
Yeah.
And then the end of this movie, which is just like chaos of all these characters, this big epic kind of Lord of the Rings style battle. It's like, yeah, you're gonna have to really take your time to build up another threat, but what are you gonna do that?
You got to start from the ground up, and that's kind of one of the things I want to talk about when Rich and I do our Star Trek Discovery, is called rapid burnout, and that happened with the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films, which I predicted almost immediately, because I'm like, when you blow up planets, multitudes of planets in your first movie, and you do like these 50,000 Starfleet ships just obliterated by this giant, and then you burn it too fast, it burns out.
Well, that's what happened with those DC movies too.
Yeah,
they did the Man of Steel movie, and then they were immediately like Batman and Superman and Justice League. Blah, 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 blah.
Right, and Discovery. I mean, I don't. It shit the bed so badly at the end of the season, where it's like, you want to talk about crazy. You do something too quickly, it burns out. That's why the Thanos storyline was so satisfying, because it literally took 10 years to get to. Yeah. And it was kind of like hinted and planned out from the very get-go. We're going to work all the way up to this Thanos, and power stones from the universe that control everything. You don't do that in your first movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, if they do reformat and reassemble the Avengers into all new characters, whether or not it's someone else playing Captain America and this or that, you got to start at the ground up. And it's kind of hard to go back. Our new villain in the Avengers, New Avengers, that's what I'll call it, the New Avengers, is Wizro. I will turn your earlobes into grapefruits. Oh no, Wizro. Oh, we defeated Wizro. And then the Avengers just destroy him in an instant, and then the movie ends.
Oh, okay.
We've dealt with Thanos. Can we just get to the next big villain?
So, Mike, would you recommend Avengers Endgame?
Absolutely. I think upon some extra views of this, I will probably get more out of it. For 3 hours, it certainly did not feel its length, which is good.
Well, like I said, each act kind of feels like its own little movie. The first act is the dour, depressing, living with this disaster. Second act is fun, Back to the Future 2, goofy stuff. Captain America fights himself, which was fun. Surprisingly little action until the finale. That restraint was sort of interesting. I wasn't expecting that, but
it just saved all their cash for the end.
It's,
a good amount of funny, despite the subject matter being kind of depressing, and we've got to save everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your stamp of trademark Marvel humor is still there. Thor is the Big Lebowski. Wonderful.
I don't think anyone was expecting that.
No.
Speaking of the movie going in places you wouldn't think.
And that's the thing is, if you don't read spoilers, if you just go into this kind of as a sequel to Infinity War, that goes in all sorts of weird, wacky directions, and I found that particular aspect of it the most enjoyable.
Yeah.
My eyes glazed over for the big battle at the end, of course, and which is the porn that everyone's looking for. But
that's, yeah.
I was just like, yeah.
I enjoyed a lot of it. It didn't have the kind of, there's lots of great little moments during the big epic battle at the end of Infinity War. So it's not quite as satisfying as the action in Infinity War. Yeah. It was exciting when all the Doctor Strange portals started opening up and all these characters. That's like I said, the first act, the first hour of the movie is so depressing and miserable, where it's once you get to that point at the end when people start coming back, it feels earned. Mm-hmm. So even though the actual fighting is a little your eyes glaze over a little bit, but that initial reveal of all the characters showing up was oh, this is great.
But after this, I'm taking a Thanos vacation.
I'm gonna go sit out on the farm and look at the sunset.
Just kind of collect big berries and put them in make my soup.
Yeah.
In my little hut. Mm-hmm. Until people show up to kill me. But I'm just gonna make my soup in my little hut, and hey, the new Spider-Man movie's out. Hey,
yeah.
So it's time to hang up our Marvel hats and put on our Star Wars hats as we watch beloved franchises go down in flames like the Hindenburg.
I guess that's the best thing you can say about this movie. They don't fuck it up. It's not a horrible, embarrassing disaster.
No.